My name is Vivienne Lapointe. I am 66 years old. Last Christmas, in my own dining room, my son-in-law poured champagne for his mother while I watched from the far end of the table. He filled the glass to the brim, bent down, and said something in her ear, and she laughed, and the whole table turned toward her laughing. Then he came around to my side. He reached past me and lifted the gravy boat I had just picked up with both hands. "Let me get that, Vivienne," he said very gently, the way you say something gentle when you want it heard. He set the boat back down. Then he reached to the side table against the wall, the small one where I keep things I need within reach. And he picked up my red rubber grip pad and placed it beside my plate. "For the cranberry lid," he said, "your hands." 8 people were at that table. My daughter Annette sat across from me. She was looking at her napkin. A few minutes later, once my son-in-law had returned to his own chair and raised his glass, he told the table that the family finances were finally being sorted out properly. He smiled at me when he said it. I smiled back. What I did the following morning took 11 weeks to reach a conclusion. When it did, it reached it across a boardroom table at a bank branch on Dunlop Street in Barrie, where a trust and estate specialist and 2 representatives from the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee of Ontario sat on one side, and my son-in-law sat on the other, and the room went the kind of quiet that has nothing to do with noise. Welcome to Fierce Mom Stories, the channel for women who kept every piece of paper and knew exactly which drawer it was in. Drop a comment before we get to the part where it all unravels, because that part is worth staying for. Bernard and I bought the house on Osprey Crescent in the fall of 1986. 4-bedroom, brick, semi-detached at the edge of a new subdivision that smelled like sawdust and wet concrete, $112,000, a mortgage that scared us both the way good mortgages should. Bernard was a pipe fitter. I was 3 years into a job at Halloway Trust, a mid-sized trust company, downtown Barrie, later folded into a larger institution, though the people I worked with there remain the most precise professionals I have ever known. I started as an administrative assistant in the estate and trust administration department. Night school at Georgian College for 4 years. Nobody asked to see the certificate. In 1994, they made me an estate administrator. In 2002, senior trust officer. That is the person who manages the assets of clients who cannot manage them alone. The elderly, the incapacitated, the court-supervised. For 19 years, I read wills, verified account authorities, and made certain that the people claiming the right to touch someone else's money actually had it. I retired in June of 2021, butter tarts on the last day. I have thought about that job every single day since. Bernard died on a Wednesday morning in November of 2022. Stroke, in the kitchen, before I was awake. 68 years old, 41 years married. The coffee maker had finished its cycle and the carafe was still full on the burner when I found him. He had kept his chair pulled a little closer to the window than the others because he liked the morning light on his face when he read the paper. I have not moved that chair. I will not move that chair. In early 2019, I was diagnosed with essential tremor, a neurological condition. The hands shake at rest, worse on the right side, and I am right-handed. I hold a cup with 2 hands now. An occupational therapist named Deborah at a clinic in Barrie gave me my first rubber grip pad in April of that year. A circle of red rubber, textured on both sides, about the size of a coaster. You lay it on a jar lid, and it gives your fingers enough purchase to turn. Deborah was matter-of-fact in a way I appreciated immediately. "Think of it as part of your toolkit," she said, "not part of your problem." I have used one every day since. My son-in-law had watched me use it at my own kitchen counter for 3 years before last Christmas. My daughter Annette is 37. She manages accounts for a marketing firm in Toronto. Organized, capable, confident in rooms. She has her father's eyes and my tendency to assume she is the smartest person present. She married Spencer Gould 8 years ago. Spencer is 40, runs a landscaping and property maintenance company out of Innisfil that has expanded 3 times and contracted twice. I am not saying he is a bad businessman. I am saying the numbers he mentions at dinner are never the same numbers 2 dinners in a row. Spencer's mother, Wanda, is 62. She moved from Mississauga to a condo in Barrie a few years ago. She laughs at everything, which I have never been fully able to decide is warmth or performance. In 8 years of overlapping family events, she sat at the head of my table last Christmas. Bernard's chair, 1986. For 2 years after he died, nobody sat in it. Annette moved a place setting into it the summer of 2024 for a family dinner, and I did not say anything because she was right that it was 11 fewer steps to the kitchen door, and I could not find a graceful way to refuse a true thing. In September of 2024, Spencer called on a Tuesday evening. He said he had been thinking. He said he was worried about me being alone in the house, managing everything. He said he wanted to make sure the family was in a position to help if something happened. Then he asked if I had a power of attorney for property. A power of attorney for property in Ontario is a legal document that gives another person authority over your finances and assets. It is governed by the Substitute Decisions Act. I spent 19 years reading these documents, questioning them, and in a handful of careful cases, declining to honor them. I told Spencer I had one. Bernard and I had named each other in 2010, and I had updated it after he died to name my sister. He said it would give him and Annette peace of mind if they could be included. I said I would think about it. The following morning, I called my branch and spoke to the manager I had dealt with for 12 years. I placed a standing instruction on all my accounts. No changes, no beneficiary updates, no transfers of signing authority, without my appearing in person at the branch. She had received this request before. She was not surprised. She noted it on the file and mailed me a written confirmation, which arrived 3 days later and went into the accordion file I keep on the second shelf of my bedroom closet. Spencer came by on the 4th of October with a folder under his arm. He had a power of attorney for property form already filled out in my name, with his and Annette's names typed in as my attorneys. A lawyer friend had prepared it, he said. Standard form. Just a signature. I sat under the kitchen lamp and I read every page, 14 minutes. Then I picked up my pen and I signed it. And beside my signature, the way I have done on every document I have signed since 1994, I wrote the date and the time. October 4th, 2024, 7:21 p.m. Spencer asked why I wrote the time. Old habit, I said. People who work with documents long enough do it without thinking. He took the folder and said not to worry about anything. He did not stay for tea. I heard his truck back down the crescent, and then I sat at the table for a long while with my hand flat on the wood. I had just done the single most useful thing I would do all year. I want to stop here and say something directly to you, because you are probably in a kitchen or a living room, and this is the moment that matters most. Go and find out whose name is on your power of attorney. If you gave someone signing authority on a day you were unwell, or in a hurry, or because it seemed like the kind and convenient thing to do, call your bank on Monday morning and ask what is currently on file under your name. It costs you a phone call. Drop a comment below if you find a name you do not recognize. And subscribe, because the part that resolved all of this is still ahead. Christmas Eve. My house. 8 people. Annette and Spencer, their daughter Quinn, who is 15. Wanda, Spencer's brother and his wife. 2 neighbors from down the crescent who had nowhere else to be, which is how my table has always worked. Annette arrived at 9 with her own serving dishes and a printed seating chart. She had the energy of a person who has been quietly in charge of something for longer than you had noticed. I let her be in charge. Wanda came at noon. Spencer took her coat and held her chair, and the room arranged itself around her the way rooms do when the most comfortable person decides to stay. She sat in Bernard's chair with both elbows on the armrests, and I will say plainly that it looked natural, and I still do not know exactly what that says about me that I found it harder to look at than almost anything else that afternoon. I had my grip pad in my cardigan pocket. It goes where I go. Dinner at 5. Spencer opened the champagne and poured for Wanda first, right to the rim, and she pressed her hand to her chest. Then he came around, and when he reached my end, he set the gravy boat back down and took my grip pad from the side table and placed it beside my plate for the cranberry lid. "Your hands," he said it kindly. That is the particular difficulty of a kind voice. It makes the other thing very hard to name out loud. I took the pad in my left hand. I hold a grip pad better than he has had occasion to know. He went back to his chair and waited for the table to settle, and then he raised his glass. This year, he said, things were being sorted the way they should be. The family was finally in a position to manage things properly. He looked at me. He smiled. Wanda said, "How wonderful." Quinn was sitting 2 seats from me. She is 15, level-headed in the way that 15-year-olds who have spent years watching adults quietly often are. She looked at her father, then at her mother, then at me. She did not say anything. Neither did I. I was not humiliated into silence. I want that understood. I had known for exactly 8 weeks that this moment was coming. I spent 30 years at a desk learning that a person who believes you have agreed with them will keep talking. And a person who keeps talking will tell you things. Spencer told me a great deal at that table. He just thought he was celebrating. The rest of dinner went the way those dinners go. Spencer mentioned the company expansion twice, which is one more time than a person mentions something when it is already settled. He did not look at me between 5 o'clock and 8. Not once. My son-in-law sat 6 feet away from me for 3 hours and found something to study in every other direction. At 7:30, Quinn carried my plate to the kitchen and came back and stood beside my chair without speaking, just stood there with her hand on the back of it. "Do you want me to do the dishes?" she said. "I'll manage," I said. "I know you will," she said. She is 15. She has understood for some time which adult in the room to trust, and that is not a small thing for a 15-year-old to carry quietly. They left at 9, 3 car doors, and then the crescent went quiet. I went to my bedroom closet and I got the accordion file down. Here is what my kitchen looks like at 9:30 at night in December. The ceiling light is too bright and the counter lamp too warm, and I use both because between them I can see clearly. The furnace runs every 40 minutes, and the baseboard heater in the mudroom clicks when the temperature drops. Bernard used to say the house had its own heartbeat. I used to tell him that was ridiculous. I think about it now every time the baseboard clicks. I laid everything out on the kitchen table the way I used to lay out a file at Holloway Trust. Chronological order. You do not begin with the argument. You begin with the dates. October 4th. My signature, date and time in my own handwriting, 7:21 p.m. Then I opened my laptop and I looked up the Substitute Decisions Act of Ontario, Section 10. Witnesses. A continuing power of attorney for property requires 2 witnesses who are not the grantor's spouse, not the grantor's child, and not the attorney named in the document. Spencer had brought 1 witness. The form required 2. I looked at the name of that witness on the copy I had kept before Spencer left. It was Spencer's business partner. I said a word out loud in an empty house. Then I put the kettle on. I went to bed at 11. I slept better than I had in months. Christmas morning. My neighbors were opening stockings. I sat at the kitchen table with tea, and I wrote 3 things. The first letter went to my bank, formally invoking the standing instruction I had placed in October. No account inquiries, no changes, no requests from any third party, including any person presenting a purported power of attorney. Effective immediately. Confirmation in writing, please. The second went to Lise Tremblay, a solicitor in Barrie I have known for 22 years, herself a former trust officer. I asked her to prepare a fresh power of attorney, naming my sister and my neighbor Rochelle as my co-attorneys, and to note for the record that no prior power of attorney prepared or presented by any other person had been validly executed under the Act since the October form lacked the required second independent witness. The third letter went to the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee of Ontario, the provincial body that exists, among other things, to receive concerns about the financial safety of adults in this province. My letter cited the Substitute Decisions Act, described the events of October 4th, enclosed a copy of the form with my annotated signature, and asked that a file be opened. 3 letters on Christmas morning while the baseboard clicked, and Bernard's chair sat by the window in the winter light. I drove to the Canada Post drop box on Dunlop Street and mailed all 3. Certified, where the option existed, $14.60. I kept the receipt. I went home and made scrambled eggs and read my book. What I did not yet know was what the bank's records would show me in February. The fraud and elder financial abuse team had already flagged an inquiry from an outside party in November. Before the Christmas dinner, before any of it, asking about my account structure and whether a power of attorney could be processed without my attendance at the branch. Someone had called my bank in November, identified himself as family, and asked about my money. The call was logged. It is always logged. When Lise read that line to me, we both sat with it for a while. Spencer and Annette arrived at my door on January 14th, 3 car doors in the driveway on a gray Tuesday morning. Spencer came in first and stood in the kitchen with his coat on, which is what people do when they do not plan to stay. Annette stood in the doorway behind him with her arms folded. "What have you done?" Spencer said. "I updated my account authorities," I said. "You filed a report with a government office." "I reported a concern," I said, "the way the policy says to." He said I was making things difficult for people who only wanted to help me. He said the family had gone to considerable effort. He said the October form was a kindness, not a scheme. I let him finish. I have been letting people finish sentences for 30 years because a person who thinks you have agreed with them will keep talking, and a person who keeps talking will tell you things. Then I got up from the table. It takes me a moment, and he waited, and I went to the drawer by the stove, and I took out the red rubber grip pad. I pressed it into his hands and folded his fingers around it, the way he had folded mine at Christmas. "Take this home," I said. "I've got my own." Then I said the only other thing I said that morning. From this point forward, anything about my accounts comes to me in writing. The bank meeting was February 14th, Valentine's Day. Berry branch, boardroom, fluorescent lights, a tray of shortbread someone had left on the table. Lise sat beside me. Across from us, Spencer, Annette, and a lawyer from Toronto who billed by the 6-minute increment and who was, I suspect, charging more for that morning than Spencer had fully calculated. The bank's trust and estate specialist laid out the findings. The November inquiry, the invalid power of attorney. One witness, the wrong one. The standing instruction I had placed on October 5th, the morning after Spencer had asked about my accounts on the phone, before he came to my door with the form. The elder financial abuse report the bank had filed internally, as required under their obligations to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. Then she set the documents down. "Mr. Gould," she said, "the power of attorney presented to this institution was not validly executed under the Substitute Decisions Act. The witness is your business associate, which constitutes a disqualifying relationship. Without 2 valid independent witnesses, the document has no legal effect. It never did." Spencer's lawyer asked about preparing a corrected version. Lise put her hand flat on the table. "Mrs. Lapointe executed a new power of attorney in January naming independent attorneys," she said. "There is nothing to correct because there is nothing current." Spencer said I was being unreasonable. He said the family could not help me if I was going to treat them like this. I reached into my handbag. I took out the red rubber grip pad and I set it on the boardroom table. "At my Christmas dinner," I said, "your mother held a champagne glass in my late husband's chair. I held this." I looked at him steadily. I administered other people's estates for 30 years. I know what a valid document looks like. I have known the difference since before your company had a name. I picked up the grip pad and put it back in my handbag. "In writing, going forward," I said. "That is the boundary." Annette was looking at the table. She did not speak. The Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee closed the investigation in March. No assets had been transferred. The invalid document had been voided. Protective instructions were in place. The elder financial abuse flag remained on Spencer's file with the bank. Spencer's company took on a silent partner in April. Rochelle told me, who heard it from someone at the marina. The capital he had been counting on did not appear the way he had planned. Wanda moved back to Mississauga in the spring. Annette and I have exchanged 7 emails since January. She asked about Easter. I told her the kitchen door was open to her and to Quinn without conditions, and I meant it, and I will keep meaning it. Quinn came out on a Saturday in late March. She took the bus to Barrie and walked the last stretch of the Crescent because she said she needed the cold air. We made pea soup from the freezer, and I showed her how to read an account statement line by line, and she asked every question that occurred to her, which was a great many. At the end of the afternoon, she asked why I kept a folder of old correspondence in my bedroom closet. Paper does not forget, I told her. People who manage other people's money for long enough learn to trust paper more than memory, and that is not cynicism. That is the job. She thought about it. Did you always know, she said, that he was going to try it? I considered how to answer that, honestly. I suspected, I said, but I did not need to know for certain. I only needed to know what to do when someone arrived at my door with a form. She nodded. She took 2 of my pens from the drawer by the phone before she left. The Bic ones I keep there for exactly this purpose, and she said she was going to start writing the date on things. Write the time too, I said. Why the time? Because a date tells you when, I said. The time tells you how fast they were moving. She laughed at me, which was the correct response. I am 66 years old. I walk with a cane on the harder days and without it on the better ones. My right hand shakes at rest and grips well enough when it matters, which is not always when people expect it to matter. I have a red rubber grip pad in every room of this house and one in my purse that has gone everywhere I have gone since April of 2019. What has held me upright through all of this was never the cane. It was never the accounts either. It was the plain habit of reading the complete document before I signed, writing the true date and the actual time in my own handwriting, and understanding that a woman who says nothing in a room has not necessarily done nothing. A quiet woman is not an uninformed one. If this made you want to check whose name is on your paperwork, do it today. Not next week. Today. Drop a comment and tell me what you find, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.